Good day, Munir Ajam from SUKAD Corp. And with this video, we are starting a new series on the SUKAD Way project management framework. And we will focus on this video on why the SUKAD Way. And for this, I'll have to tell you a story. A few years ago, as far as back as 2004 and 2005, we started SUKAD as a training and consultancy company in Dubai in the United Arab Emirates. And we did a lot of project management training for all type of clients. In those days, PMI was starting to become more and more popular. And as a result, a lot of the courses we were giving were about the PMBOK guide or PMP certification. And one thing we noticed as we delivered many training for many companies, especially when a lot of new people coming to project management and even some experienced participant in this workshop, we have noticed that most of them, they are telling us, and they can demonstrate to us, that they understand the concept of the PMI framework and the PMP certification, and they can even achieve the certifications. However, the feedback we kept hearing from the participants themselves, from their management, and from executive is that, okay, we now know the PMI framework, the process groups, and the knowledge areas, and all of that stuff, but we still struggle in how to implement it. And as we start digging into this, what we discovered is that the problem is not with the PMBOK guide, because it's a good guide, is that many people, including those who teach the PMI framework, the PMBOK guide, and the PMP certification, do not really understand the guide and its intent. For example, the guide is called a guide to the project management body of knowledge. So the first thing, it is not the body of knowledge. Most people think, this is it. This is, especially when it gets bigger and bigger, almost 800 pages. Wow, this is the guide. This is the project management body of knowledge. And some people even call it PM book, as like the only book that exists. But they had forgot to understand that when the book itself, the guide itself, in it, it says that this is a guide to the body of knowledge, because the body of knowledge is so huge, it cannot be fit in a book. So that guide is a subset of the body of knowledge. Only a subset, which means a piece of the body of knowledge. What the guide also advocates is that in order to implement that framework, organization should have two things. And the guide referred to them. And one of them referred to them through what they call the organizational process asset, which is, in other words, it is that the organization need to have a proper established project management or organizational project management system. And by system, we don't mean technology or IT. What we mean is the policies, the governance, the procedures, the guideline for managing project, program, and portfolio in the organization. So the PMBOK guide clearly said it is not the organizational project management system. Organization should implement OPM. That's one major gap of understanding the PMBOK guide, and that was not being translated properly to participant of training on the PMI framework. The other major fundamental gap, not in the guide, it's in explaining and understanding the guide, is that many practitioners and even trainers assumed or understood the PMBOK guide to be a methodology. And they considered the process group as the project life cycles. Although the guide clearly says it is not a methodology. Organization can use the knowledge and the content of the guide to develop their own bespoke or specific or tailored method that fit the type of project and organization. So there is no methodology. And the process group are not project phases, which is many people misunderstand that even today, despite the popularity of the guide over more than 20 years now. So with these two gaps, when we start to observe our participant, our client, saying, look, we still do not know how to apply this. Well, the problem was they were trying to implement it as a methodology, where in reality, as we just said, it is not a methodology. So one time, the story continues. One time back in 2007, I think if I'm not mistaken, September 1, 2007, a couple of international colleagues of mine and myself and a few other people, we are launching a project management association in Dubai. And we have a grand opening or a launch for that association. After that, or the night before, I can't even remember, we were having dinner, the three of us. And we kept, actually the night before, because what happened the day before, I was leading a class for a major organization in Dubai. In that class, I had people from HR, people from PR, people from marketing, people from IT. We even had one guy working on a PhD. And as I was explaining fundamental project management to them, many of them struggled. They said, okay, some people complained, said, why are you teaching about scheduling? Well, I mean, scheduling is an essential knowledge area of project management. So we need to talk about scheduling. Otherwise, how can we do a project without schedule? The PR person told me, Munir, I don't understand. We don't have budgets because the budget are handled by somebody else. So someone else, a PhD guy, said, well, how can I implement this on my PhD thesis? So what I've noticed during that session, and of course, during other discussion and other training, but that was the timing of that class was appropriate, is that many people want something specific to them. And some of them are not managing project, they're only managing a piece of the project, or they're managing a section of the project. So they may not need all project management. But at the same time, they needed something, a simplified yet solid methodology with case studies and example. So at dinner with my two colleagues, I asked them, said, okay guys, you guys are from Europe and internationals and you are as exposed as I am. Have you seen any references to a methodology or methodological approach or anything like this that is practical and people can use and that it guides? So it's like a guidance, it's just more like step-by-step process. The answer was no. That night, we decided to do something about it. Now, unfortunately, my colleagues did not back me up, so I ended up doing it alone, and then with my support within SUKAD, with the help of my colleague in the company, Luke Bowmans, and Nada Shaban, we started working, or I started working, and with their support and reviews and guidance as well, we started to develop a methodology that ultimately become the customizable and adaptable methodology for managing project, which many of you are probably familiar with it, and I can explain more about it in another video in this series. Camp was the first product we started working on, and then we discovered, said, look, we need more. And as a result, we launched in SUKAD what we called the Project Management Innovation Program at the time, and later become labeled as the SUKAD way for managing project. And most recently, we adjusted the name to call it the SUKAD way Project Management Framework. Now, why do we call it Project Management Framework? Because it has many components. So why the SUKAD way? I close this video. We did the SUKAD way. We started the SUKAD way back in 2007 because we noticed pain points in the market. We noticed some growing pain for project management in the project management community. We noticed a lot of gaps in understanding the most popular guide and the most popular certification at that time, and maybe still is, the PMBOK guide and PMP certification. We've noticed a lot of the training on this subject were really missing the point and actually conveying wrong information. And as a result, we decided to do something about it, and we launched the SUKAD way. Now, what does the SUKAD way consist of today? What are the components of the SUKAD way? There are 4 or 5 major components, which I will briefly introduce them in the next video. And later on, I will have a dedicated video for each one of those topics. For now, I say thank you for listening. I hope you are liking our video series, whether it's the Depend series or this new series. And if you like it, we would appreciate it if you share and subscribe to our channel. Thank you. Grateful for your time.